Gopi Jannava Gopi Jannava Lava Girivana Dari Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, let me see if I have something here. Okay. So, Tasmadidam Bhagavatam Purnanam Dasalakshanam Proktam Bhagavata Praha Pitara Putraya Bhutakrit. Thereupon, the supplementary Vedic literature, Srimad Bhagavatam, was described by the personality of Godhead, in which contains 10 characteristics, was told with satisfaction by the Father to his son Narada. So we're almost concluding with this chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, in which Brahma performed penance, and he pleased the Supreme Personality of Godhead, got darshan of the spiritual world, and then was instructed the Srimad Bhagavatam. So Srila Prabhupada makes a lot of points in this verse, and I'll cover some of those points, and then I may bridge off just a little bit, just to talk about what's the guru and disciple, and just the knowledge that comes in succession. But Prabhupada makes an interesting point here. Well, he makes that. Well, so anyways, this verse here is mentioned that there's 10 characteristics spoken in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and so the first verse of the next chapter explains that, and so I'll just read those just so we kind of understand that. So, Sri Shukha Vacha Atra Sargo Vishargam Shastanam Pushanam Utaya Manvantare Shanukata Nirodo Mukti Ashrayaha. So, Sri Sukadeva Goswami said, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there are 10 divisions of statements regarding the following: the creation of the universe, subcreation, planetary systems, protection by the Lord, the created impetus, the change of manus, the science of God, returning home back to Godhead, liberation, and the sunam bonum of life. So Prabhupada would label some of the cantos as like specifically like being this, like the sunam bonum would say like that's the 10th canto, and then I may forget some of them exactly, but the first canto would say creation. I guess that would be sarga, and then the second canto, Visarga, secondary creation, and then the 8th canto, I know, the change of manus. So anyways, some of these cantos may cover some of these subjects more than others, but it's not that, like, for instance, let me see here. Like the science of returning back, the science of returning back home, back to Godhead. It's not that that's just like mentioned just only in one canto, and then that happens in no other canto. Like, the 4th canto, there's devotees that go back home, back to Godhead. The 9th canto, basically every canto, the first canto. So it's not like it's just like limited just to that canto, and then every other part is, doesn't have that. And then some like explain more than others and things like that. The change of manus, that's highly described in the 8th canto. All the different, anyways, I'm not going to get into all of that. But so that's, the Bhagavatam has different subjects and things that it discusses. And ultimately, it's meant to bring us to the point of surrendering to Krishna. But because the the great souls like Brahma, Narada, Vyas, and others that come in this cyclical succession understands that it's not, it's not a matter of just telling the soul, the jiva, to surrender, and then they immediately just give up all material desires and attain pure love of Godhead. That there has to be like some convincing, and the individual needs to understand the nature of the Supreme Lord and the nature of the material energy, and also how to engage in the process of devotional service. So there's a lot that has to be explained. And so those 4 verses then become, 4 billion, Srila Prabhupada said. And so Brahma heard this transcendental knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the supplementary Vedic literature. So this is described in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So it has 10 characteristics. So those 4 verses also, those within those 10 characteristics are described. And that's a whole other subject, and that's not. I'm not going to go there today because I'm not qualified, and I don't know. So those 10 characteristics are there, and so one important aspect too is that Brahma was happy to speak this information to Narada. So one who is speaking transcendental knowledge should be satisfied to speak it. They may be dissatisfied if the hearer is not qualified, because then they're just thinking I'm speaking, but then the person's not hearing or not receiving or whatever it is. So there may be like dissatisfaction. That may be dissatisfaction on the part of the hearer, but is a dissatisfaction in the sense that the speaker or the guru or whoever it is, they want that individual to come to the platform of Krishna consciousness, and they're dissatisfied that for whatever reason that they have attachments, they're not able to come up to that. So that dissatisfaction may be there, but it's not a dissatisfaction in the sense that like I'm speaking and nobody's hearing, just like people of the mundane world, they're not recognizing how great I am. So, but Brahma was satisfied to speak this information to his son, Narada Muni, and so this I read also. So just the context of this too, like we were reading back, we don't have to go there, but in the previous chapters, there was a whole conversation of, Narada Muni was asking Brahma like different questions, like, you seem like you're the supreme, and like, like who created this world, and different, all these things like that. So I read in one book that it was saying that this whole thing that Brahma saw, the Supreme Lord and everything, and now he's instructing Narada Muni that this is like, that afterwards Narada Muni will like start to ask like these questions, like why are you like you engage in penance and things like that. So so continuing on with the verse, so one important aspect of this verse, so a lot of points that are made that are important to understand, but that the what is this here, the creation. So a lot of these things were covered in the Chatur Sloka, and Prabhupada makes that point. The Lord existed before the creation and things like that. And it's an important point here to understand, which we don't have that misconception, but so many misconceptions can happen when you're not connected to the proper parampara, is that the 4 verses, the Chatur Slokis, that's what Krishna spoke. So that's the important part of Bhagavatam, and everything else is useless, which is an interesting proposition. And of course, somebody's probably preaching that. So we understand that, as of course, that's nonsense. So these other, that gives the essence of Srimad Bhagavatam and all the philosophies explained in there. But because we're not so intelligent, we need deeper explanation of how to understand those verses. It's like we had that whole seminar on the Chatur Sloki. We could have just sat down and read it, but we needed further explanations to understand, what exactly are the Acharyas saying, and, in detail is like, and like that, all those things. If we were just to read it by ourselves without the commentaries of the Acharyas, it'd be highly doubtful if we were to understand that, that these verses are talking about, Sambandha, our relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Abhideya, are the activities, and then Prayojan, the goal of life, to come out of that. So all of our acharyas have commented upon that, and then going into detail that aham means, like I, and then the Supreme Lord is, a person, and Brahma is a person. So all these, so the acharyas and the gurus give all these different instructions, and transcendental knowledge for our benefit. So one important aspect is also too this. So evam parampara praptam. So Brahma spoke this knowledge to his son Narada, and and we also understand that Narada Muni spoke this knowledge to Vyasadeva, and so it's also mentioned that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed Rupa Goswami. So the important thing is, so this knowledge we have to understand, it comes in succession, one after the other. And so the guru speaks the knowledge, and then the disciple hears it. And then the disciple repeats it. And it's also too that, Brahma is speaking this knowledge. We're talking about, the guru of the past couple of days. So Brahma spoke this knowledge to Narada Muni. And we understand that, Narada Muni is a great exalted devotee. I mean, we read in the Srimad Bhagavatam, was it that Narada Muni spoke all of his glories in the Srimad Bhagavatam? No. It was, other devotees added that, and they spoke we can assume that Narada Muni, that Brahma, he spoke the 4 verses, then Narada Muni expanded upon them and just began to talk about himself. We can, devotees are humble. He may have spoken some things of himself, but we can probably assume that, Vyasadeva wrote those things down, and Sukadeva Goswami also mentioned those things. Because Narada Muni is actually mentioned a lot in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And actually, at one point in the Bhagavatam, we see that when Narada Muni is discussing in the 7th canto, the 1st chapter, he mentions that these great demons have much more devotion, and they're much more attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and their animosity than he is. And so the acharyas make that he's saying that out of humility. And so, anyways, but the point is that Brahma is speaking this knowledge to Narada Muni, and he's not speaking it in a condescending way. Brahma understands, he can see past, present, and future. He knows the great position of Narada Muni, and that he's a liberated soul, and so many different intricacies that we may not even can fathom or understand. But he's aware of the exalted position of Narada Muni, and it's not an ego battle between them, and Brahma's trying to establish his greatness, because we also see that just by reading the Srimad Bhagavatam, from one aspect, Narada Muni seems to play much, and it's different from each. It's one important aspect to understand. And sometimes we talk about the spiritual world, is perfect, more perfect, and and sometimes it's misunderstood that there's the Vaikuntha planets are lower than Goloka Vrindavan, so therefore it's we make a distinction between higher and lower, on a material platform. But for pure devotees, one pure devotee may seemingly do more service than another pure devotee. So it seems like Narada Muni in some aspects has done more for the preaching than Brahma has, in the sense that Narada Muni is traveling around initiating disciples, like Dhruva Maharaj, he delivered him, and then Prahlad Maharaj, this hunter, is mentioned in previous verses. We don't really see so much of Brahma, traveling around and preaching. Of course, Brahma comes down in Chaitanya Leela as Haridas Thakur, and so he preaches in that sense by chanting the holy name of the Lord. That's mentioned there. But from a disciple's perspective, he may feel more indebted to this spiritual master who preached to him and took him out of the material energy. Just as it's natural that one is drowning, and then so many people may try to help him, but then that person that pulls him out of the water, that person's indebted to because that individual saved their life. And so we also see that too with Prahlad Maharaj. He offers a prayer. What is this? Evam vanami itadikam prabhupadi kupe, something like that. I can't remember at the top of my head, but he's praying that that Narada Muni saved me from falling down into a well full of snakes. And so it's my first what is this? But yeah, my first duty or topmost priority is to engage in his service. So how could I leave the shelter of his lotus feet? So the disciple, and Prabhupada said that something along those lines, but that or I've heard that the disciples should see the spiritual master as like Superman, in the sense not like some superhero, but of topmost importance to one's life. So, and it can seem like that. But we should also understand that different devotees, by the arrangement of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they have different functions for spreading the Sankirtan movement. So although Brahma may have not directly have gone out and preached to so many people and things like that, like how Narada Muni does, but he spoke the Vedic knowledge, and he heard the Srimad Bhagavatam, and he passed that down. And we also see that, we have like Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj, that, he enacted the pastime of just, accepting just like one disciple. And I think he had some servant or something too. But it was, but he wasn't, seemingly there was a difference between, him and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, in the sense that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur established so many temples, was so evolved in the world seemingly, and initiating so many disciples. But the pure devotees of the Lord, they're all on the transcendental platform. They're all very dear to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Krishna is very pleased with their service. And so Brahma has a different function. Having that post also, he has a particular duty. It's not that he can just abandon his duty of, universal management. He has that post, so he has to carry that out. And the demigods, this is a side point, but it's mentioned by our acharyas that, that they have to carry out their particular, like they generally, when they're liberated, they have to finish their post. It's not that they just leave like that. They can, but that's the general understanding. That's what I've read. So Brahma and Narada Muni, so Brahma spoke this knowledge to Narada Muni, and also too, so Brahma spoke the information to Narada Muni, the transcendental knowledge. And so as we can understand from that, and so Brahma spoke that Chatusloki from what he understood to Narada Muni, and the Narada Muni expanded upon that, and Vyasa similarly expanded upon that. And Prabhupada makes the point in the purport that great acharyas, they expand upon that. It wasn't, so how do we understand? So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, did he speak the Chatusloki to Rupa Goswami? We don't see that. If we look at the, I think it's the 16th chapter, or maybe it's the 19th chapter of the Madhya Lila. So Lord Chaitanya instructed Rupa Goswami. And so we don't see him instructing him on the Chatusloki. But Prabhupada makes the point in the purport that the missionary activities of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu can all be traced back to the Chatusloki. That everything that's obtained there. And in short, that just like we were speaking in the beginning of the class, that means Sambandha, Abhideya, Prayojan. So the philosophy can all be traced back to that, establishing Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and our relationship with him. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu spoke the same message. So it's the same, and it may seemingly, if we don't have proper understanding of the philosophy, it'll seem like something different, like, oh, he said this and said that. It's explanations of the same thing, of the same basic principle. In that sense, the transcendental knowledge continues. In essence, it's the same. There may be some differences as far as like going more into detail on certain points, but this is the system of Guru Parampara. And so a disciple, so similarly, we explain the same points of the Chatusloki. If you look at Srila Prabhupada's teachings and the books, and if we also, analyze the classes that we speak, we're speaking on the same principles that Brahma was instructed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So sometimes there's a misconception, there's so many different misconceptions, but, what to speak of, just not wanting to read Bhagavad Gita. Some people, they don't really want to read Srimad Bhagavatam and only certain parts and things like that because it's not high enough or not, relishable enough for whatever it is. But this information spoken in the Srimad Bhagavatam was expanded upon by Brahma, and if the Supreme Personality of Godhead found something not important enough or seek enough or whatever it is, then why did he speak it even at the beginning of creation if it was trivial? So why would Krishna waste his time with such information? So the thing is, this information is important and is intrinsic in order to, even if we're on the highest platform of Krishna consciousness, this knowledge is relevant because we need to explain it to others in order to keep the parampara going. So these topics, so this Sambandha, Abhideya, Prayojan, explaining in particular, the Lord's energies, Jiva, Maya, service, all these things. And so we have to understand these things as disciples, and we have to speak that same message. Otherwise, if we begin to speak something else or think something different or whatever it is, then we don't deliver the proper message. And then ideas come up that, these 4 verses of Srimad Bhagavatam are important, but all these other verses aren't important because, what does this have to do with, the Chatur Sloki or whatever? Or what does this have to do with the goal of life? Or, what does this have to do with becoming, a pure devotee of the Lord and being a gopi in Vrindavan? We're very, very attentive to those things, and those things are very important. But the other parts of Bhagavatam is not really so important. We have to understand it, we have to understand, it's really, were we going to follow that or whatever? So there may be things in Bhagavatam that we don't understand, or maybe not applicable during our certain time. Like as mentioned in the 7th canto, about that the brahmachari should wear, tree bark. So, but the thing is that we have the acharyas and they comment and then they explain that, that in this age we don't wear the tree bark, but the brahmachari has a certain dress. So then the point of that being spoken is still delivered and understood. And then also too, then there's mentioned even before that the brahmachari. You want to pull up that verse? Just take me to the 7th canto to the index, and then and then I'll find it. If you can. 7th canto, index. So scroll down. It's the Varnashram mentioned with the brahmachari. Scroll up. So scroll down. So scroll down a little bit. Okay, yeah, so the spiritual classes, 712. So click that first one. So 12:1. So Srinado Vacha Brahmachari Gurukule Vasandanto Gorodhitam Acharyam Dasvatam Nicho Gorau Shrudida Soridaha. So the translation is, Narada Muni said, a student should practice completely controlling his senses. He should be submissive and should have an attitude of firm friendship for the spiritual master. With a great vow, the brahmachari should live at the Gurukul only for the benefit of the Gurukul. So just a couple things about this statement. So, if we look at the Chatur Sloki, what does this have to do with the Chatur Sloki, right? Krishna didn't tell Brahma that you stay at the house of the Guru, Brahma didn't stay at the house of the Guru. Is Brahma Brahmachari? He has so many sons and things like that. So what is going on? Like, how do we understand all these things? We look at the Chatur Sloki and we look at this verse. Obviously, it's just nonsense. So the thing is that, Narada Muni heard the Chatur Sloki and then reflecting upon that, was inspired by the Supreme Personality of Godhead and expanded more upon those instructions. So obviously, if we analyze this verse, we can see this has everything to do with the Chatur Sloki. We won't be able to understand the Chatur Sloki, enter into the intricacies of it, or attain perfection in spiritual life if we don't follow the instructions in this verse right here. There's no spiritual life without following this verse. And so so this verse is explaining about how the disciple, the shishya, you just stay down at the English translation, is that that he has, in order to understand, and I'm just going to, without getting into the details of Chatur Sloki, I'll just speak in the sense of, Sambandha, understanding our relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Abhideya, our activities, then Prayojan, the goal of life. And so the Sambandha, so our relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead is first established by complete surrender to the Guru. Living at the house of the Guru for the benefit of the Guru. And so the Guru gives instruction. And before even the Guru gives instruction, there has to be sense control. Because there's no question of understanding spiritual knowledge without sense control. It's not going to happen. It doesn't, it's a basic, this isn't even like spiritual knowledge at that point. If you're enjoying the senses and enjoying the material world, and then you try to understand the transcendental world, it's just not going to happen. You're cut off. You can't live a hedonistic life and enter into the intricacies of spiritual life. It's, the Prabhupada makes this point in the purport. There's one verse where he says, I'm forgetting exactly, but propaganda that one can, live a comfortable life and enjoy this material world and at the same time advance spiritually is simply bogus. something along those lines. I think it's in this canto, actually. So he should be submissive, have a firm attitude of friendship. And so the disciples should live at the house of the guru. So Narada Muni spoke this information and spoke this transcendental knowledge, and he expanded upon that. So we're seeing how he expanded upon the Chatur Sloki. And so the disciple has to have that same mood. And so we understand that, and we read this. And so the guru explains about, how is this? So, living at the Gurukul. So what does that mean in India? So Prabhupada established these temples. And then controlling the senses in the sense of, going out and distributing books, being submissive, humble, having a firm friendship for the spiritual master. So you may never meet the spiritual master, or maybe you don't get to associate with them so much. So what does that mean? You can't be dear to the guru. No, that doesn't mean, it means you carry the instructions of the guru. So the point is that, we need association of devotees so we can understand the Srimad Bhagavatam and how to carry out its instructions in our life. And one has to be qualified to speak that. Otherwise, then we have misconceptions. And then we have all these funny philosophies, well, that you don't really need, a living guru, that, if you just accept Srila Prabhupada's books, you don't need to take initiation, because, so many funny ideas that are out there. Or you don't need to follow all these things and this and that. You don't need to be so serious about Krishna consciousness. Just like one individual was preaching that I heard some time ago, but he was saying that, well, you don't really have to become free from material desires. Prabhupada just said 70%. But what the hell is this? Sorry for my language. It is nonsense. He's saying that, we don't have to fully surrender to Guru. We don't have to fully surrender to Krishna, because, Prabhupada is very merciful. The Guru is very merciful. So we can have material attachments. So we don't necessarily need to become pure. So that's nonsense. None of the Prabhupada doesn't teach that in his books. There's a statement where Prabhupada's saying, you become, this pure, that pure, but 70%, that's it. The point of that statement is not that, that you try to carry out Krishna consciousness and then, whatever, you have attachments and just the heck, you don't bother giving them up. But the point is that we should always be endeavoring to give up our material attachments. And we should be struggling. The point is that we should be struggling to become Krishna conscious, not that we're struggling just becoming dragged down by material desires. Because the thing is that we say, well, if I just become 70% Krishna conscious, then okay. But the thing is, the nature of the material world is that by becoming 70% Krishna conscious, we'll automatically become zero, because then we're giving more leeway to the material energy. So the material energy will drag us down. And then, so many things will happen as a result of that. So Srila Prabhupada, he wants commitment from his disciples. And we also want commitment from the practice of Krishna consciousness. Just like Chandracharya Prabhu was making the point the other day, that in the Vyasa-san, you speak the highest thing. It's not that you sit on the Vyasa-san and you say so many different things. Well, if you get initiated and you can't follow the vows, that's okay. At least you tried. But it's like, then why did you take initiation? Prabhupada would say that you make a promise before the Guru, before the fire, before the devotees, for everybody that you'll follow these, and then you don't. You're just an animal. You're no better than a dog. So, and it's heavy, but it's, is reality. So we should understand, and, the gravity of the information being given in Srimad Bhagavatam, and take that seriously. And so Srila Prabhupada would speak in that way. So we take the highest thing and then we speak that. And we continue that knowledge also. And we hear in the parampara and we repeat that. That's a very important point. So you can bring up a sloka here. I'll probably end a little bit early today. So you can bring up, Canto 7, Chapter 9, I think text 18. Yeah, 18. So there's a lot of points that are made in this verse. So, okay. Soham priyasya suratar paradevataya lila katas tavanashima vinitya gitaha anjas teriyam yanugritam gunavipta mukto durgani te parayugaya hamsa sangaha. So this is Prahlad Maharaj. So, O my Lord Nrsimhadev, by engaging in your transcendental loving service in the association of devotees who are liberated souls, I shall become completely uncontaminated by the association of the three modes of material nature and be able to chant the glories of your lordship, who are so dear to me. I shall chant your glories, following exactly in the footsteps of Lord Brahma and his disciplic succession. In this way, I shall undoubtedly be able to cross the ocean of Nensets. So there's a lot of points I want to make here. So maybe the first point, which is more relevant with today's verse, is, so you could scroll down a little bit. So Prahlad Maharaj says that I shall chant your glories, following exactly in the footsteps of Lord Brahma and his disciplic succession. So the same thing. So, Prahlad Maharaj, we may not have read all these prayers yet, but, we should read them eventually. But he offers, so many beautiful prayers, to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he's explaining here that he's doing so in Parampara, following the footsteps of Lord Brahma. So Lord Brahma, understood this Chatur-sloki. So just to kind of just bring it back to that same point. And so the devotees are expanding upon that. Scroll up a little bit. So, loving service. So let me see here what I wrote down for this verse. So just a couple things. So by repeating this transcendental message, we may have, material desires. We may not be at the topmost platform, whatever it is. But there's a process to come to that, to sadhana bhakti, which the Krishna was explaining in the beginning of the Chatur-sloki. He was going to explain that, angas for achieving, the highest transcendental knowledge, this Krishna consciousness. So we may be in a position where, or at least I am, that we're not fully Krishna conscious, but we want to become Krishna conscious. So the acharyas, the great devotees, they explain how we can do that. And so Prahlad Maharaj, particularly in this verse, is mentioning that by chanting the glories of the Supreme Personality of God, scroll up to Sanskrit real quick again. Sorry, if I had it here, it'd be easier. So Lila Katha. So and you can scroll back down. So by chanting the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we become purified. And that means all of the verses of Srimad Bhagavatam. It's not just, this part or that part. It's specifically just the 10th canto or whatever it is. Or if we want something, so then we chant this part of Bhagavad Gita, or we chant this sloka, and, whatever. There's, like it's mentioned, these different follow sutras, these fruits that one can, by chanting certain chapters of the Bhagavatam. So it's like it's mentioned, I forget exactly for Dhruva Maharaj, but if you chant like on certain day, then you this and that, and then whatever, then you achieve victory over your enemies by reading this chapter. We're not interested in all that. We're interested in chanting the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and pleasing Krishna and the acharyas. That's what we're interested in, And if whatever, that we may have material desires, okay, but we should understand that we have to follow the process and apply ourselves full-heartedly in order to transcend that. And so you can scroll down a little bit. So it's also mentioning here by the association of devotees. I think that's mentioned up top there. Anyway, I wish I could see the whole verse at once. So the Prahlad Maharaj is explaining. So he's engaging in the transcendental loving service. So in the association of devotees. So that's also important. We have to have the association of devotees. These are basic points, but sometimes we forget in Krishna consciousness how important the association devotees are, or we take them for granted, or whatever it is, or we think that that we'll transcend the the miseries of material life by not associating with devotees and not hearing Srimad Bhagavatam and not following the process of Krishna consciousness. Well, everything that is the whole process of Krishna consciousness we won't follow, and somehow that will become Krishna conscious. By negating the process of Krishna consciousness, we become not Krishna conscious. That's the formula. Just like there's a sadhana for Krishna consciousness. So if you want the formula for becoming not Krishna conscious, just do everything that that you should, don't do everything you should be doing, and then you'll become not Krishna conscious. Or maybe you'll get smacked so hard by Maya that then you'll want to become Krishna conscious again. And so Prahlad Maharaj is explaining like that. So another important aspect here is, so Prahlad Maharaj is explaining, so he'll chant the glories by following in the footsteps of Lord Brahma. And there's a lot of nice points made in the purport, and just to save on time, I won't go through all of those. Maybe I should bring it up. But Prabhupada makes a lot of nice points just about, following the disciplic succession and repeating that message, and about how, we were talking about that point yesterday in class, that we should repeat the prayers of the great acharyas because, Krishna has accepted those, and it comes in parampara, so there's some shakti there. So Prabhupada comments upon that actually in that purport a little bit. And so we speak the Srimad Bhagavatam and the message of the parampara. We follow in their footsteps. We speak the same thing. And that's what it means, parampara, guru, disciple. So the guru speaks, the disciple hears, and the disciple speaks the same thing. And it seems like a simple thing, and it is a simple thing. And we'll get into that a little bit later. And so Prahlad Maharaj also makes a point that by following the footsteps of these great acharyas, that he'll be able to cross over the ocean of material existence. You scroll down a little bit, and then scroll down. It's like the last sentence. So by repeating the message and glorifying the Supreme Person of Godhead and Parampara, we can cross over the ocean of essence. And so that could be translated in so many things. I think that the word for word it mentions exactly miseries of material existence. So that's the process. So we repeat the same message. We speak about Krishna, and then we can cross over the ocean of essence. And so the point is that, if we speak exactly as we've heard from our acharyas and the guru, we repeat that same message, then it's the same, there should be some effect. That's the point. There should be some change. There should be some revelation, and the person who's hearing, eventually there should be something that's life-changing, especially if an individual is not Krishna conscious. And so when we see that actually, that Brahma, he was explaining this Chatur Sloki. He heard the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, engaged in tapasya. He heard and he executed that instruction. And then as a result of that, his life changed very greatly. He saw this, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He obtained this vijnanam. He spoke this, he lived that, because as we see previously, that when Narada Muni came to see Brahma, he was engaged in tapasya and meditating on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So there should be some change from hearing transcendental knowledge, and that change. So there may be different reasons why the individual doesn't change, but if we're not going to get into that, all the intricacies of that. But we hear that knowledge. And we see so many times in Bhagavatam, there's those who are speaking the transcendental knowledge, that there's a change in the individual. And there's so many cases of that. Just like, King Prajini Barisha. Last class I was reading from some of his verses. But Narada Muni was instructing him, and there was a change. And what was that change? He renounced his household life, gave up everything, and went back to Godhead. With Dhruva Maharaj, there was similarly a change. In the sense, he was pretty motivated for, what he was trying to achieve, a kingdom greater than his Brahma. But then there was a change in his consciousness by executing these austerities, so much so that he quotes there's this amazing verse that Prabhupada quotes. What is this? Stanamilasi tapasisi tvam ham tvam praptibam deva mununjaguyam gacham vijibam abhideviratvam swamin katarpos ninvanam nayache. So Dhruva Maharaj is explaining, in short, that he was engaged in these very difficult austerities and penances and things to obtain what he wanted, to fulfill his desire. And so these things that he was doing was very difficult for these devas, these rishis, great demigods like this. You can imagine Dhruva Maharaj, living as such a human being, he's doing austerities more difficult than the demigods and great sages and rishis. So how determined he was as a young boy. And so after doing all that, he realized that, he was searching after pieces of broken glass, because now he's achieved this Divya Ratnam. So Ratna is a jewel, but, not some ordinary jewel, not some diamond, not some this and that. People, they have, I don't know, I'm not so interested, but they have all these big, famous diamonds that, that people keep in museums and things like that. I remember reading, anyways, not that it matters, but one person had he's some super rich guy. He had one of the biggest diamonds in the world, and before he got raided, I think by the British. But he used to he used to just keep one of the biggest jewels, just because he had so much Lakshmi. He was rich. He would just keep it as a paperweight, just whatever. You have a book or something, and then you keep a pen to keep it on the page. He would just keep that diamond and just put it there. So, but Dhruva Maharaj isn't interested in these jewels. Divya Ratnam is the greatest treasure of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we see, Dhruva Maharaj and Vyasadeva also seemingly changed. He was morose at first. I compiled all these different things, and the next verse will talk about that, about Vyasadeva and how he was qualified as a disciple of Narada Muni. And so Vyasadeva was morose, and so Prahlad, not Prahlad, a different version of the Bhagavatam I'm creating. But Narada Muni, he spoke to Vyasadeva, and there was a change. And so what happened to Vyasadeva? Anybody remember in the first canto? I have some interaction. Vyasadeva, so Narada Muni spoke, and then something happened to Vyasadeva. Exactly. He saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he also saw the material energy. And Prabhupada makes that point in the next purport. So there was something happened. He heard Narada Muni, he carried out his instructions, something big happened. And so the same thing. I mean, we're hearing this message in parampara, and there's a strength that comes with that. When the guru strictly follows, his spiritual master, and he repeats that, there's some change in the disciple's life. Not that we hear the spiritual master, we associate with him, and then after all that, we go back to, watching movies on Netflix or something like that, or, hanging out at the beach, or, whatever, or we call, this girl that we knew from back, before we moved in the temple, and start hanging out with her again, is that's not the effect of transcendental knowledge. And so also by hearing from the spiritual master, it should be clear, when we're speaking this message, people should when they hear the Bhagavatam, they hear us give a class, it should be clear of who Krishna is, what our position is in this material world, what Maya is, what the Jiva is, what Bhakti is, all these things. If we're giving class and we're speaking, but then after the class people are just more confused, that means either we have to read the books more, or we're preaching something that's not in parampara, that we haven't understood the message properly. Because if we're speaking, Om Jnana Timanandasya Gyananjanjana Shalakaya, this isn't just some sloka that we just chant, just whatever. But the spiritual masters, he's speaking that knowledge, and it's just like a torchlight. So when there's a torchlight, when there's some light, then there's illumination. If I come in, if it's, pitch black, just like if we, we shut those floodlights off and we come into the temple room when the sun sets, and I said, don't worry, I brought a light, but then there's no light, he would say, well, it is still dark. So I mean, no, don't, I have brought light. I'm shining, my phone light is on, it's shining full blast, it's like we can see everything in the temple room. But we're in dark, there's no light coming, it's in darkness. So we may be saying so many things and speaking so many things, but if people don't understand that, about Krishna or the goal of life and all these things, then we're not speaking the proper thing. And so there may be introductory classes or whatever and things. We maybe try to help people understand what there is a supreme controller, there is a God, and that material life isn't just meant for making money and all these things. We may speak in a more simple way, but the direction should be the same, and people should have the same inspiration. They should come up gradually. That's the point. It should be the same message. And there's different, there may be different, ways of speaking that message, but the overall, the message should be the same. It's, whatever. And, they may, in a different country, different analogies may be used, or whatever. Just like in Western countries, bread is very popular, baking bread. So whatever, we may use an analogy about baking bread. Whereas in North India, chapatis are more popular. People don't, they whatever. So we may say, oh, okay, whatever. You add this much flour and this much water, and you make the dough and you make chapatis. So therefore, the recipe's good. And then whatever, another part of the world, you add this much water and this much flour, and then a binding, and then you bake the bread at this temperature. But it's the same message. It gets the same point across. And so if we speak that message, and if we uphold to that, and we preserve that message, there's strength there. And changes will happen. There won't be a change in somebody's life if we change the message. If we just speak whatever, that you do your yoga and you do your nonsense, and you don't have to give up sense gratification, and it's okay if you eat meat, and if you can't follow whatever. If we speak like that, to somebody for all time and don't give them further spiritual knowledge, then there won't be any change. And then we can also see too, what to speak of all these things. We can see in our own lives that devotees that took the time to speak to us, the pure message of Krishna consciousness, how that made a change and that made an effect in our own lives. But if somebody came just some vague thing that, Krishna, this and that, it's all the same, and, whatever you want to do, or, you don't really have to surrender, and you don't, there's, you can distribute Prabhupada's books, but that might be too intense, it's really difficult, so maybe better, you just do kirtan in the temple, and you don't want to go outside and do Harinam because your mind might be disturbed, and we want you to be peaceful and happy in Krishna consciousness. And yeah, there's some heavy things there in Shastra, but don't worry about that, if you feel uncomfortable, we can skip the part of the Bhagavatam that talks about the hellish planets. We don't need to discuss that. We just want you to be happy. What's important, if you're happy, then Krishna's happy. That's nonsense. It's not true. In the conditional stage of life, with all our material desires, if we're happy in sense gratification, Krishna's not happy with our sense gratification. That's the whole point of the material world is facility for us to exhibit our perverted, envious desires separate from Krishna, and Krishna's not happy with that. Krishna's given some sanction for that, but he's not satisfied with that. So if the devotees didn't take the time to speak to us the message, where would we be at in our lives? We can reflect upon that and think about that. Or we could think, well, the devotees just disturbed me and they spoke all these things and, whatever, now I know this stuff and I'm not really so interested in it. That's there also. But the thing is that sincerity can't be faked. And so if we've come in contact with Krishna consciousness, we should take up to it with the fullmost heart and apply ourselves fully. And we'll be happy if we do it. Ye tam mam prapanjantes tam sadaiva pajamyaham. Krishna says, as he surrenders unto me, he rewards accordingly. So there's transcendental knowledge. And so the essence of the guru-disciple relationship that is based on transcendental knowledge. The guru is instructing the disciple. And there may be so many people, I don't know if Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said it, but I heard from my spiritual master. He was saying that, more rare than finding a bona fide guru is finding a bona fide disciple who's actually willing to take and receive that message. So we should endeavor to be that rare disciple. And we should always endeavor in that way to try to hear the spiritual master, apply his teachings in our life, and take that to heart. And if we do that, we'll be so glad that we did. Because material world, it has a beginning, it has a middle, and it has an end. So whatever position we get here in the material world, it's not permanent. And so people may not be able to understand that. And that's mentioned in Bhagavad Gita and also mentioned in Bhagavatam, that in this 15th chapter, I won't pull that verse up now, but it's mentioned that pretty much that there's, I'm paraphrasing, but that there's people who are engaging in the process of self-realization, that they can understand that there's a body and there's a soul, and that the soul leaves the body and goes on to another body. But those who aren't endeavoring in that path, they can't understand, though they may try to. So people may not be able to understand, why are you doing all these things? Why are you placing so much emphasis on being Krishna conscious? Why not, make it a big in this material world and be happy materially and do all these things? Why so heavy with the message? Why so heavy with the message? Because this is a heavy message, and this is how Krishna explained it to Brahma, heavy. And it's meant to be understood in the same mood and same vein. And this is the only way that this change is going to come about, is that it's heavy. It's mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam also, I think Canto 11, chapter 26, text 26, that the sadhu, he cuts, very very intensely with words, the disciple, the heart of the disciple. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur would say that just like, you read there, an intelligent person should therefore reject all bad association and instead take up the association of saintly devotees whose words cut off the excessive attachment of one's mind. So we're attached. That's the main thing. We're excessively attached to the material world, and we require somebody to come and excessively cut our attachments. because otherwise we're not going to give them up. We're just going to, whatever. We're going to have 1 foot in the material world and 1 foot in the spiritual world, and then end up with 2 feet in the material world because we're going to be pulled. Maya is like, what is this? They have, Maya is like a current in the ocean. If we go in the ocean, we're going to get pulled away. So if we mess around with material energy, we're going to get pulled away. So we have to stay firmly fixed in the transcendental knowledge. And so the Guru gives that. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur would say that just like, I'm paraphrasing again, but the Guru is he takes, like the attachments of the disciple on the altar, and like a sacrificial animal, he cuts them. It's pretty gruesome. So our attachments are pretty gruesome, and our situation is deplorable. But if we endeavor in that way, if we sincerely pray and we sincerely try, we have to try in Krishna consciousness. We have to make an endeavor. We have to lift ourselves up from the ocean of darkness that we're in, and attempt to put ourselves in the light to receive the mercy of the spiritual master, execute those instructions, and try. And if we do that, Krishna will reciprocate. Krishna will help us. We will get strength from the parampara to execute those instructions. And that's the only thing worthwhile in this life. And so just to end this class, just with a couple points. So this is on another subject. But Srila Prabhupada's purports, and I've been saying this again and again, and I'll say it again and again, and I'll continue to say it even after this. And I was talking to Avadut Chandra the other day about this, but in short, sometimes it's said that, Srila Prabhupada's purports are like repetitive, and he says the same things and this and that. And that's there in one aspect. Srila Prabhupada does repeat things in his purport, and that's not a fault. Prabhupada says that in order to understand the subject matter, you have to repeat it repetitively. Keep explaining the same things over and over again. But one thing I've been realizing just recently, especially the past couple weeks, but in this purport also, Srila Prabhupada makes very unique points that he doesn't make anywhere else in the Srimad Bhagavatam, actually. And one point that popped out to me today while reading this was he's explaining this point about that, the Lord spoke these 4 verses, so therefore all the other, thousands of verses of Bhagavatam are just useless. And so maybe we won't appreciate this unless we've read all of Srila Prabhupada's books and we're familiar with them all, about the uniqueness that Srila Prabhupada put into every purport. And then he goes on here to explain, that the Guru, I'm paraphrasing again, but the Guru explained it to his disciple, and the disciple expanded it in that sense. And then he also makes another amazing point. Srimad Bhagavatam, being the sound representation of the Lord, is simultaneously explained in 4 verses and in 4 billion verses, all the same, inasmuch as the Lord is smaller than the atom and bigger than the unlimited sky. Such is the potency of Srimad Bhagavatam. And it's really amazing, actually, if you think about that. That, Srimad Bhagavatam, we think it's such a big book, but it's explained in 4 verses, which is so small, and then 4 billion verses. We don't have the billion-verse Bhagavatam on this planet, but we can pray that maybe that'll come down. That'd be a big book to read that. Oh, it's just 4 billion verses. If you just read like 10 pages a day for 100 years, you'll finish it. Oh man. But it's amazing actually, Srila Prabhupada's purports. And they're very unique. And so anyways, it's something that I'm just realizing more and more as reading. And then also too in the next verse, I read that one also. But Prabhupada similarly makes another unique statement that he doesn't make anywhere else in any of his purports. I'll mention it briefly. I'm not going to explain it, but he talks about contraposition. And anyways, Prabhupada makes that point in the purport. He doesn't make that point anywhere else. It's like a logical thing. I had to look it up actually because I didn't understand that. But it's like a branch of logic. And whoever gives class, they can explain that, tomorrow. But and that's the thing, is being made the point in this purport, is that, the acharyas, they explain it, and they bring out newer and newer meanings and different angles. They add to the transcendental, because the thing is, we can look at it this way also, that the Lord spoke the Chatur Sloki, And now it's like the acharyas are making comments, and it's like almost like a conversation, that they say, well, you can understand it this way, then they add a little bit more depth, and then what about it from this angle? And it's just like they're all glorifying the Supreme Personality of Godhead and bringing more and more perspective about how, Krishna is amazing. What is this? He's bigger than the biggest and smaller than the smallest. What is it? Yandadhavastu paramanu chiyadadastam. So, Krishna can it be explained in 4 billion verses, just as good as he could be explained in 4 small verses. So, anyways, I'll end there. If there's any questions or comments about anything. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Kalki Prabhu. I have a few questions. You were mentioning about the pala shrutis or stutis, the fruits that one can achieve after reciting certain sections. And you gave the example about conquering over one's enemies. And I was thinking about the different boons that are offered. And I was considering them coming from transcendental sources. Could the fruits of these stutis be, like, bring about material attachment? You know what I'm saying? Like the Srimad Bhagavatam is like, the Amala Purana, but yet it's giving like these different rewards for people to have, like to desire material things. But the Bhagavatam is Dharma Projita Kaitava. It kicks out cheating religion that's material motivated. So how does that, these?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. If one has so the thing is that if one has an improper understanding, he's not getting hearing the message properly, he may become attached to certain things. But the thing is that the main idea is that, okay, so it's understood that, okay, you have attachments. So if you have material attachments, better to approach Krishna with it. Because if you approach Krishna with it, you'll get purified, and then you'll get free from those material attachments. Whereas if you just do some, sacrifice for some demigod or something, or, chant 1,000 names of Indra, I don't know if that's existing, but, you chant 1,000 names of Indra because you want to conquer over your enemies, then, you may conquer over your enemies, but you're still going to remain in this material world. Whereas if you pray to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, you may conquer over your enemies, but at the same time, you have that opportunity to, like Dhruva Maharaj, to become purified and then realize, well, actually, I don't want that. So that's kind of the idea, with those things. It's to help us become purified and come to the transcendental platform.
Another question I have is, we're hearing about Brahma instructing Narada, and the guru-disciple relationship. And from my own perspective, I'm curious to know, because obviously I'm not at the highest platform, being a conditioned soul. So how does Yasya Devi Parabhaktir develop? Because obviously it's not that you just sit in the yagya and then, you throw the grains in, and then all of a sudden the highest gift is, bestowed upon you of unflinching faith. Yeah. So how does one develop? Is that just thickening over time, or how does that?
You talk about just faith, or
Yasya Devi Parabhaktir. How do you, obtain that?
Yeah. Faith in the spiritual master?
Exactly.
Specifically that? Okay. So the thing is, it's a cultivation. So there has to be some basic faith and some basic trust. But, like we're saying, we're not on the highest platform of full surrender to the guru, but we should understand that that's the goal. And so we have to work in that. And so we hear from the guru, and we execute those instructions, and we follow the process of Krishna consciousness, and naturally, we should become more and more attached to the spiritual master. Because the guru is speaking, do this, do that. And if we don't even have enough faith to do that, then there's a problem. If the guru is just saying do something simple. Or the guru may tell us to do something very difficult or very life-changing. But if we're taking initiation, the whole idea is that I have faith that this, whatever this person is telling me is for my benefit. So I should, execute it without reservation, or without, I don't want to do it because, I know better. So we should have at least that faith. So the thing is, if we follow the process, and we have to apply ourselves, it's different from person to person, but the essence is the same. And so that faith will develop by, associating also too. That's why you associate with devotees that have more faith than the spiritual master. That strengthens your faith. because then they can express to you that, oh, I was in such a situation, and, you know, whatever, you know, my Guru Maharaj told me this, or, you know, and then, you know, I had some doubts, but then I did it, and then like 20 years later, I'm seeing that that was like the best decision of my life. And sometimes it may take 20 years or whatever it is. So we have to have the proper association. It all ties in together. But the thing is that that faith will develop if we strictly follow the process. And, you know, like that.
I have one last small question. In today's purport, Prabhupada was mentioning Lord Chaitanya instructing Rupa Goswami.
Yes.
And Rupa Goswami elaborated on a certain verse. Do you know which Prabhupada was referring to there?
It's here in a certain verse.
Maybe I just didn't understand it, but...
It said here that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed this Srila Rupa Goswami in a nutshell. So in a nutshell, it just means, you know, like the Chatusloki.
Rupa Goswami elaborated on that verse?
Yeah. So, I mean, Rupa Goswami, so Lord Chaitanya instructed Rupa Goswami, you know, this is verses, Brahmanya, Banyate, Punya Bhagavan Jeev, you know, like, pretty much, like, in short, like, I mean, there's a lot of aspects to, like, what, like, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed Rupa Goswami, but he starts off that, like, there's so many living entities in the material world, and, like, some are moving, some are not moving, and then, like, of all the living entities, you have, like, whatever, different types, you know, humans, devas, this and that, then you have human beings, and then, you know, out of all these human beings, like, you know, like, one is, like, interested in, like, you know, karma kanda, then you have perfect karma kandi, and then gyanis, and then moksha, and then, you know, whatever. All these people looking for moksha, hardly one, you know, like that. That's like kind of the instruction he gave. And then, you know, there's surrender to the guru. Then he talks about the bhakti lita beach. So the whole, anyways, in short, like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was instructing Rupa Goswami in this sambandha, abhideya, and prayojan. So that's all there. And then, you know, there's Brahmanya, Banyate, Konya Bhagavan Jeev. That's in that whatever, that verse is there. And then also another verse that we quote is that, was this La Puja Prishta, I forget how that starts, but that, you know, the be careful about weeds in the path of devotional service. So that being careful of weeds is referring to, you know, we're executing abhideya, you know, the activities of devotional service, and you have to be careful of things that will hinder that from prayojan, the goal of life. And it's abundant is that, you know, we're eternal souls. And then there's nectar of devotion that's expanded upon what Lord Chaitanya taught to Rupa Goswami. Nectar of instruction also. Specifically, Bhakti Rashvita Sindhu from that chapter, but everything, you know, that the acharyas give is, you know, because Lord Chaitanya Prabhupada would say he left 8 verses, and then the 6 Goswamis expanded upon that in their different literatures. So that's kind of like that in short. Yeah. Anything else? Okay. All right. Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Srila Prabhupada ki. Hare Krishna, Vanchukapurubhasha, Kripasanivivaccha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavibhyo, Namo Namaha.